All right, so welcome anyone who is spectating. Um, I'm Gemiah Kurzfeld, and today we're doing the third installment of the Artist Living Room July series, and we'll be focusing on the kind of Asia Australia audience, but anyone's of course welcome to join us. And today we're going to be going over some of the performances that we did in the Metamorfosize live concert in May, and talking a little bit about the creation process and how that was for all of us performers. But before we get started, if anyone is watching the live stream right now, just wanted to let you know we're going to do the live stream for this whole introduction, and then we're going to just go into the Zoom call. So if you like, on the live stream, there should be a link to join the Zoom call, and then you can participate for the rest of the event. The live stream will be shut off then because it can be an issue with copyright music and so on in live stream on Facebook. The Zoom call is completely free, and we'd love to have you join us. You can feel free to ask questions and take part. Before we get started, to go show over Metamorfosize is essentially the project that we're all a part of, and it's a group of creators, artists, humans that's kind of focused on creating art and sharing workshops and discussions about change and metamorphosis and how to do that in a healthy way, especially in these wild times we've been going through lately. As we do our introductions, Valencia maybe could talk a little bit more about the project as a whole. Today we're going to be focusing on mostly on the live concert and the performances that we did back in May. All right, so today we have 7 people with us from the show, and myself included, and we'll be talking about 4 pieces that we did in the show, all a variety of different live performance art done through the medium of Zoom. Great. Let's go ahead and start out with introductions. I'll start out. I'm Gemiah Kurzfeld. I'm a circus artist from California in the USA, and I do a variety of disciplines within circus. I'm an aerialist, juggler, acrobat, unicyclist. I love performing and in many different types, forms, and shapes, and I've been enjoying doing it even in this virtual format. And next up we'll have Kerensa, if you'd like to go ahead and introduce yourself. Kerensa, you're on mute right now.
Hello, I'm Kerensa. I'm Kerensa Dewantoro. I've been living here in Indonesia for about 25 years. I started coming here in 1990 to study Topeng, traditional dance, and in about 2000 I started making contemporary theatre, and I write plays and I direct in Indonesia, in Bahasa Indonesian. I do everything. That's it. Oh, and after me is Farah. Here's Farah.
So, hi everybody. I'm Farah, and I'm a dancer and a choreographer from Singapore. I am trained in classical ballet, street jazz, but right now my passion, which has been for the past maybe 15 years, is Brazilian Samba. And it's my forte right now, and I hit the Singapore School of Samba with my partner, my dance partner, Noididi, and basically being in Metamorposize, okay, it's been, it was a chance for me to explore and mash up samba with other artists. So that was exciting. Thank you. More about that later. And the next person is let's go to Dominique. Nikki.
Hi everyone. Thanks, Farah. It was wonderful performing with you, and for more to come. I'm Nikki. I've danced belly dance for 15 years now, and I lived in New York City for the last 20 years, but now I'm in Berlin. And I go by Pumpernicki, and I also spin fire, and would I be at festivals right now if it hadn't been for the pandemic. But I'm so happy that we had Metamorfosize happen, so we were still performing even from at home. And I would like to pass it on to Tulus.
Toulouse, you're up. Can you introduce yourself?
Okay. Thank you. Hi. I'm Tulus Sumanto from Indonesia. I'm living in Malang City. I'm learning tradition Japanese from Indonesia, and this is my culture, Japanese. And then I'm learning contemporary dance, jazz ballet, and then acrobatic like aerial dance, and then pool dance. And then I'm learning to fire dance. Yeah, I like, and I loving the performance. That's just that it. Thank you. And then Daniel, next.
Hi, my name is Daniel Berkman, and I'm a composer and multi-instrumentalist in San Francisco. And I sort of specialize in peculiar and historically significant musical instruments, including common instruments. And I've done a lot of composing for film, a lot of composing for dancers, choreographers, all kinds of things. So, but my main instrument, I would say, is probably the kora, which is a West African harp. And I often play that through electronics, and sort of, I guess you could say I sort of am trying to innovate that particular instrument among the many instruments that I play. And now I'd like to hand it over to Valencia.
Hi, Valencia. I'm originally from Indonesia, but I have been kind of all over the place and nomadic for the past 5 years, which has allowed me to meet a lot of wonderful people, some of whom are on this call right now, and many of whom participated in the Metamorfosize project from Singapore, Berlin, and more recently, California. And the idea to start this kind of came very serendipitously. It started out as just a desire to do my own performance, and it evolved into inviting people to perform together. So it became a bit more like a concert, and then it also involved workshops, and now it became kind of a community with some degree of continuity where we're still doing this now, and we're planning for the next concert, which will be in September. And so I project manage, I dance, I paint, a bit of everything, kind of bored very easily. So I just do something a little bit and then move on to the next thing. And yeah, so yeah, that's that. So Gemiah, we can passing it back to you now.
All right, now I can talk. Thank you, Valencia. Great, thank you all. So lovely to see all your faces. A really lovely group of people. And okay, awesome. Next, we're going to start with showing some the videos soon and talking about each act independently. And so we'll be closing off the live stream soon. So if anyone's there, please feel free to join us on the Zoom call. You should have the link right there on the live stream, and we'd love to see you. And otherwise, yeah, anyone that would like to ask questions at any time, feel free. We'll be starting with the videos and then going into discussing each act and what went into creating it and so on. All right. So Valencia, I believe you're on the live stream.
Yeah, Daniel, ending music.
Daniel? Yeah.
What was that?
Do you want to do an ending music, an outro?
An outro? I didn't think.
Anytime we can get music from Daniel is always a good thing.
Ta-da!
Yeah.
Okay, live stream is done.
All right. Awesome.
We are now in our little private room. Okay.
Yeah. Nice and private. All right. Well, the first piece will be Rock and Roll Topeng by Kerensa. Lovely mask work piece that I'm really excited to see some more video of. You want to go ahead and start playing that?
This is a man's world. Because men make them toys, but after didn't have to love yourself. Come on, get up, get up, get up, get up. So good, I got it. All right, I wanna ride.
All right, lovely. Nice. That piece was so fascinating. There was like so much in it. Lovely to see. I forgot to say, I think we are just us, so I don't know if I need to do any real descriptors at the moment. But all the videos are shortened. And yeah. Kerensa, that piece, there was like so much. I feel like I could it brought up a lot of questions for me, which was really cool because I feel like there was so much in it that, I mean, sometimes I'm just clueless when it comes to even as an artist, I watch art and I'm like, what does that mean? And I really like that. I wanted to ask, what was the meaning of the mask? What was the meaning of each mask to you? And I guess, I mean, this might tie into the creation process of it in general and how the creation happened. But does each mask have a meaning to you in your life, or is there a separate meaning to that, and so on?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's the meaning within the framework of tradition, which is the Balinese mask tradition. So, even though I was using Western music, they were all following, and a Western suit, the movements of the mask were within the frame of the character types that those masks represent.
Okay.
But then on a personal level, like the old man mask, it is the first mask. I bought 2 masks that day, and it's the first mask that I ever bought, and I bought it with my dance teacher. And so there is this, and that's also, the old man is also the first mask dance that I learned after learning
Wow.
the warriors dance, which is like the basic for training for going into Balinese mask. So yeah, the old man is my teacher has passed away, and it is a connection, a very strong connection to him, that history, that time. He is the most important man in my life, well, apart from my son. Yeah, so that's it. And then the other masks are characters, and so that's connected to my own, I guess, a fascination with actors transforming. Like I like that, to play with that in my own work, but I also love seeing. That's why I've attended all these artists' rooms, because I'm quite fascinated between who someone is when they're not performing and when they are performing.
Totally.
And those transitions that happen. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Yeah. I find mask work personally really fascinating. Everything I've seen in it, in performance, and just about it is really interesting because of, I think, kind of what you were just saying about that, like transformation of a performer, like between performing and not performing, but also between the different masks we wear. And I think that really ties into so much of real life things, of like the masks we wear in different social situations. But also it's really interesting to see what happens when someone puts a different mask on, and I think even without having training, you can see a big difference, even with just any person, when they put a different mask on, all of a sudden it changes them a bit, and it's really interesting. On that note, I wanted to ask, could you tell us a little bit more about this, the Balinese Topeng art form and its significance to you and to performance in general and so.
Okay. In performance in general, like there is a lot of Western contemporary performance, and it comes from the initial text that Antonin Artaud wrote, which was when he saw a Balinese dance troupe in Paris, and he made some very astute observations. It was the same text that I read, so he wrote that like in 1920 or something at an expo, and that trigger of interest in another culture and seeing another culture has been heavily influential on Western contemporary theatre practice. In terms of what it means, and so that's how I came to it. Originally, I came there as a theatre student who wanted to learn something that would be good, yeah, and I thought I could master it in 3 weeks. I was 19 at the time, but it became sort of a lifelong relationship. In Bali, there are different reasons the masks are performed. So it's often performed at it's performed for tourists in hotels, of course, but it's also performed as entertainment outside of the inner temple. And then at other times, it's also performed as an offering. And there is there's different types of masks that are used. The masks, so it does depend on context and the energy and what the function of this performance is doing in that community at that time. In terms of masks, nearly all performance masks have special rituals attached to them to bring them alive. But also masks come alive via the energy that's given to them. So it's after 20 years of using these masks in that way, they don't change. Their characters don't change. The context changes, but the characters don't. So even a cheap mask, a mask that's been made for tourists and made to be put on the wall, can actually end up having performance energy after the work is done on it. There you go.
Totally. Yeah. That's really cool. I really found it interesting what you were saying about the different uses of the masks, and of like tourist performance and traditional performance outside the temple, and also the offerings. I think that's really cool to have within an art form something beyond beyond something that's, you know, for money or for this, like, you know, purpose of entertaining other humans or something like that. Because I mean, in so much of art it's for something, like, I mean, I'm not personally a religious person, but I think something about art is it's for something greater than just entertainment or something like that. The goal in art is to have something beyond that. But so much of the time, the emphasis ends up becoming like, can I make money with it or whatever, and all these things. And to have that actually built into an art form where it is, some of it is related to something else seems really cool to me. I never actually thought about that so much. Okay, well, we only have a, go ahead.
One about the even when they are performing for tourists, it's still seen as an offering. There's an element of the offering. And yeah, I'll let you ask your question.
That's cool. Okay, well, we only have a couple minutes left before we should probably start moving on to the next piece. I was wondering if anyone else had questions they wanted to ask before I dive into anything else along with questions here.
I just wanted to say that I think the part of the performance that stood out to me the most was actually when your face mimicked the mask. I really liked it because I think that there is an element of like, you're not just wearing the mask, but you are being the mask kind of thing, you know, and how that kind of triggers some thoughts about how which one is the facade and which one is the real person. And when that line becomes so blurred, and if you're in an environment where you constantly have to be your mask, and then that mask becomes who you are, and, you know, I don't know. It's not really a question, it's just a comment on that.
Totally.
But yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's a different approach to mask training, because I think in the West, very often you immediately put the mask on and you go and work in a mirror, yeah, and you see what makes the mask come alive. Whereas in Bali, when you train for the mask, you don't ever wear the mask until like, you don't even get to see the mask until 10 minutes before your first performance. So it's that idea that actually, and so Atta, Grotowski, they all talk about, you know, the use of every single muscle in your face, and this as part of our actor training.
Wow, that is so fascinating. I love that completely different approach to training something. That's particularly relevant to me because circus is so much about training. It's the way you train things, the way you develop skills, and there's so many different varieties of ways to do it. You know, and it's easy to get caught up in one. You know, it's very easy, I think, especially in the Western world. It's like we have to do the right way to do these things and so on. And but there's so many varieties of different approaches, and I think great value in all of them. That's really cool.
I think Daniel wanted to say something, or did I see that?
Yeah, I was just going to say it was interesting to see this piece a little over a month later, because now there's such a hysteria about wearing masks, you know, in society these days, and so it was kind of a refreshing twist to see your artistry around around these masks, and it was a nice relief. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've all been working on mask performing in some shape or form lately.
Exactly. So it's nice to see real masks, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Great. Well, there's quite a bit more I would like to discuss about this, but I would like to make sure we have time to cover all the topics. Is there any last little thing anyone would like to say, ask about this before we move on? Okay, great. Let's go ahead and move on to the next act. Thank you, Kerensa. Lovely chatting about that. And yeah, it was really interesting. Actually, there's a lot more questions that came into my head as we talked about it. But for now, let's go ahead and move on to Grapeful. And this is in a piece. Let me make sure. Let me just check my notes really quick. This is a multidisciplinary collaborative piece with Farah, Nikki, Glen, and Chelsea. Unfortunately, Glen and Chelsea couldn't join us today, but we have these two lovely ladies, Farah and Nikki, to chat with. And let's go ahead and dive in and watch the video, and then we can talk some more about it. Beautiful. Nice. Wow, that's so cool. That's such a nice feeling to it. Yeah, thank you. Great. The first question I wanted to ask about it is how did this idea of grapes come into it? And what was that process? How did it keep going into when you had thought of grapes and the different transformations of grapes? And so on. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? You can say what the ideas behind it too.
Okay, Dominic, Nikki, do you want to take this or I'll do it?
Either way.
Okay. Well, the idea of grapes coming in was just we were just really just talking about what was the easiest or most visual way to connect all of these different artists coming from different art forms, very different art forms together, and we were just discussing very casually how grapes change and they metamorphosize into into something totally different, and then we're like, yeah, why don't we just use grapes to represent? We're like, okay, that sounds like how are we going to put this into the piece
visually?
Then I think it was Nikki, was it you who said that we would let's do it to pass
I had kombucha at home.
Sorry? Oh yeah, you had kombucha
at home from my roommate, so it kind of made sense to be the fermentation and Glenn drinking wine while playing guitar.
And then eventually becoming vinegar. Which was Chelsea, right? Yeah. So it was just a very tongue-in-cheek piece, not taking the theme of metamorphosis too seriously. It was actually just something that was really fun, and it was just, why not this? Why not that? We're just throwing bouncing ideas around, and we just settled on grapes,
Totally.
which was everybody had a stage of it in their home. Yeah. Some sort of form of grapes in there.
Tastes good.
Yeah.
Nice.
We wanted to kind of break up from like a serious topic to have a performance put in that is just kind of like very bright, just uplifting. Not much thought put into it except for having fun and being happy to perform together.
And it totally was. It was such a feel-good piece, like that music, and it's just like sitting there watching them, just like hanging out. It felt really good, which is nice, especially when you're in the context of a show that has like a lot of very artistic pieces, that are like sometimes kind of intense. It's kind of an intense journey to go on, and then just to like sit back and relax. I think it's super, super nice, and also important for shows as a just like a general like keeping a show an experience for an audience.
Yeah, we wanted to provide a bit of comedic relief.
Totally.
Some sort of.
Yeah, and the piece was a cover that Chelsea chose, actually. So I think it started with the piece.
Yeah, so Chelsea chose the piece Nakamara by Hiatus
Coyote.
Coyote, yes.
I thought that was her singing. It wasn't her singing, Chelsea?
Yeah.
She was singing.
Yeah, she was singing live.
Oh, that was great.
Yeah,
and it was Oliver on violin and Glen on the guitar.
And the guitar, yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Great. Cool. Yeah, beautiful piece. Do you guys want to talk about some of the challenges that came up in creating this piece through different time zones and everything, so an online platform or anything?
That was the main thing, actually, just collaborating through different time zones, trying to get everybody together. And yeah, Nikki being from in Berlin and me in Singapore. But it was easier for me in Chelsea and Glen because we were all in Singapore. So that was quite easy to get certain stuff together. But with Oliver, who was Oliver? Never figured out. But he was in a totally different time zone, and so was Nikki. So yeah, that was a bit challenging, and definitely took us some time to get the base of the music down. The sound and what's that? The flow of the music going. Like who was actually supposed to go first? Like, was the guitar supposed to be recorded first? Vocals, which one was supposed to go? And because of the time difference in time zone, we found that a little bit difficult. Yeah, and that's why the choreography was set in a little bit later. Quite last minute, actually. Yeah.
Glen was really good at recording really quickly, I think. The first time that we all met online, Chelsea asked, "Can you do it tonight?" And and he was like, "Yeah, okay, I can do it tonight." And then how Farah and we just sent each other video, and then rehearsed at home. And I don't think that there was one part that we danced together. When there were all of our screens on the shown, and that part we hadn't danced together actually at all. We had just sent each other, here, this is this piece we should do together, and then we'll just look at each other on the screen and do it together. Okay, now.
Yeah, we hardly rehearsed that together, actually. Yeah. We have a question from Kerensa. Did you say, Chelsea has an amazing voice, and did me, Glen, and Chelsea know each other? No, actually, we only met each other through this concert. We never knew each other from before, even though we were all living in Singapore together. So it was amazing to collaborate with them and meeting them.
I think Glen and Chelsea knew each other, but I think you didn't know them. I think
that's right.
You and Chelsea, and then you guys got to know each other here, And yeah.
And Nikki, I reached out to Nikki during, I think after one of the meetings, right? And I was like, I want to collaborate with you, belly dance and samba, and like, hey, let's just do something. Yeah.
Yeah, and also I think Valencia also was seeing that there would be a good idea to dance together.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And we
I
have
think Valencia's
plans to do
really
more
cool
stuff
place,
together.
Yeah.
I hope so. Yeah. Yeah, I think Valencia's really rocked at like bringing people together, and this whole project, I mean, it's kind of been like a real like connection based thing. Like it's created so many connections between people in different parts of the world. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm very curious what made you decide the logic of the progression from grape to kombucha to wine to vinegar. Like, is it due to the levels of fermentation, or like what is the logic behind it? I'm very curious.
Yeah, so we were trying to, I'm not a wine enthusiast or anything like this, but we were trying to figure out, that was actually the process of it, like from grapes, from the raw grapes to it being the most ultimately, fermented, or the last form of grapes could be like, which is vinegar. So like, what could we fill it up with the different stages of how it gets to be vinegar? Yeah, and everybody took a different stage at different times. Yeah, so that was basically that. Yeah, that was the process.
Yeah, I really like that, like, because it's such a nice concept of like, of course, like it's within metamorphosis, the changing of something into different states of being, and each different state has such an amazing purpose and uniqueness to itself. But it also kind of just threw me for some loops too, in some ways, of like kombucha wasn't what I was expecting for like, when I think of grapes, I'm like grapes, grape juice, wine, and then I was like, oh, kombucha. and then the same thing with vinegar, which makes a lot of sense to go to the last thing. But so much of the time when people think of fermenting, it's like this process to get to this like most magnificent thing. And I think vinegar is amazing. It's super a great thing, but it's usually people are more into wine. You know what I mean? And so this thing of like build up to the wine, and then I was like, oh, vinegar. And it was really fun to see that.
Thanks. Yeah.
What was a cool thing, I think, was passing the pieces to each other, like that challenge that went all around viral during the lockdown, and that kind of was like, oh, a metamorphosis from us giving it to you and you grabbing it, and now it's something new, and new performer, new new stage of the grapes. We were thinking that maybe at the end we all have a glass of wine and just dance. But we kept it to show the stages.
Yeah, originally 5 stages, right? Or something. There's 5 of you. What would have been the 5th item?
Well, grapes, kombucha, wine,
raisin.
Oh
no, it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be a salad bowl. Remember, the last one was supposed to be a salad bowl with balsamic vinegar.
Nice.
So Oliver was supposed to have like a bowl of salad with vinegar on it.
Yeah,
I think that the time zones was the reason why Oliver wasn't able to join us in the end.
Yeah.
Was it challenging? Was everyone able to move in the same direction, or were some of the mirrors like mirrored, or was it like pretty straightforward, the passing on, like from left to right or right to left?
We just figured that if everybody receives from the right and pass it on to the left, it would generally fit, no matter what the screen was. Yeah. So
do the same.
That wasn't too difficult. Yeah.
That was very effective.
Thanks.
It was very surprising every time.
We made sure to give it some time, during the passing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Great.
What did we do? One other challenging thing was actually trying to figure out how much time each person had with their item. Yeah. So we actually divided the minutes, right? But it was hard too because we were trying to coincide it with phases of the music. Yeah. Which we couldn't really talk to each other about. We just had to message and say this part in which seconds when the music stopped, or so that was a little bit of a challenge there.
Totally. I mean, timing is always a challenge in performance, and especially then if you're dealing with not being in the same place, it makes it that much harder to like really be synced up and
that was really fun.
Have everything matching and stuff.
I just felt like mentioning that originally they had a plan to have all their screens visible towards the end, but this was the item where I realized that because I wasn't the host for the concert, I was not able to make that happen. So I was like gallery view, and then like seeing the thing that it's not gallery view, like how come there's only Chelsea, how come I can't see everyone? So I started kind of panicking, like, oh. And then I just started spotlighting different people instead because I couldn't show everyone at the same time. But I think that was the intended visual that they wanted for towards the end, So after Chelsea sang for a while, it would be like 4 of them on the screen. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. But
that was one of the challenges with doing Zoom.
Technical challenges.
Zoom problems.
Great. All right. Well, it would be great to start moving on towards the next thing. Is there any last things anyone would like to say about the experience of performing this, or questions to you guys? Cool. All right. Well, lovely piece, and I hope to see more from all of you. Let's go ahead and move on to Puppet or Human. This is a collaborative piece done by Tulus, Kerensa, Daniel, and Glen. Like I said before, Glen can't join us today, but we'll get to chat with the other 3, and let's go ahead and check out this video. Nice. Beautiful.
Yay.
Yeah. Wow, so cool. I love the feeling of that, though. The way the music kind of carried you through everything, and the whole with like there's this kind of surreal feeling of each, like the dance and the puppet, and this kind of like I felt like I was just like floating through, almost like I was like a ghost watching from another world or something. Anyhow, how did the idea for this piece come about? What was the start for this? Would anyone like to, Kerensa or Tulus or Daniel, anyone like to chat a little bit about what started the piece?
Tulus, kamu mau bicara?
Yeah.
Nyalain.
Okay. Kerensa, help me for translate and on English. Okay. This sebuah tantangan buatku untuk merubah dari boneka menjadi seorang manusia dengan ide tentang freedom, kebebasan.
So the challenge from transforming from a puppet to becoming human with that sense of freedom associated with it.
Wow, cool. I like that. Nice. Yeah, I really like that the transition between puppet and human, but I wasn't sure what the actual meaning behind it was. Was it like a question of which or an interaction between them? But becoming human is really cool. Great concept. Was there anything in particular, Tulus, I'm speaking to you for this one, that you were trying to portray in your dance? I take it from that you were becoming human in a way. Was there any other feelings or storyline for you in that?
Tulus, apakah ada hal yang khusus kamu mau menyampaikan lewat tarian kamu? Atau ada cerita yang lain yang kamu mau sampaikan? Ya.
Oke. Ya ada. Aku lebih ingin mencoba untuk bukan hanya perubahan dari boneka menjadi seorang manusia, tapi ada kemungkinan baru tentang sebuah teks dalam bentuk teks. Bukan sekedar makna tentang tarian itu, tapi ada teks atau teks tentang kalimat atau apa yang bisa ditangkap oleh penonton.
Valencia, maybe if I'm wrong, correct me on this. So it's not just about the change from the body to becoming a human, but I think what I understand is that he's talking about the text of the body and expressing that. He used the word text. There's a lot about the biographies of bodies here in Indonesia. So I'm guessing that's the connection between text and the biography of the body. And I'm adding a little bit more to it.
Yeah.
Because these are terms that I hear here and I don't hear in other countries very often. So I guess it's how his body is read by others. Apakah itu benar?
A sentence, something about a sentence or a text that can be given to the audience or something. I've also not really heard it in that context. I'm Indonesian, but I have been in Indonesia for a while, and not working in the arts as you have. So it's fascinating also for me that you probably know more about the culture here than I do, even though I was born.
Yeah, that's it. Wow, it's a cool idea. I like that. Oh, sorry, were you about to say something to Valencia?
You can go ahead first. I can talk later.
You sure? Okay. Okay. Yeah, for me, like that idea just of the text of a body, like what is our body speaking, is really interesting. I think, especially as a physical performer, like for me, like I perform all as circus using the body, and it's amazing what we can express with the body, and also the way that different people will interpret things differently from what we, like I think even just language can be interpreted in so many different ways, but especially movement can then have such a wider range of interpretation. We can put a meaning to it, but then another person might take a completely different meaning to it. Did you want to say something, Valencia?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that when I was editing this video for the purpose of the artist living room and also for the trailer, something struck me that did not strike me when I first watched it during the concert, which is that I kind of like that the puppeteers were visible, and it made me feel kind of like the puppet was being manhandled, and it made me think about somebody whose life is kind of controlled by others, where you live to the expectations of other people. And because it's fascinating to see the puppet kind of going along, but also resisting and also going along. And then when that puppet eventually died, that's when Tulus came in. And when he started dancing, there's no person outside of him, So there is kind of that added element. And I don't know if that's intentional, but that was what registered to me. And I think Kerensa wanted to say something.
Yeah, like in response to what you just said, we as puppeteers are actually not at that stage to be aware. Like we're still learning. Like we're not professional puppeteers. That's not what we usually do. So yeah. I just also really want to say that the first piece of music was Glen, and one of the reasons that I reached out to him was that he actually posted in the group that he wanted to do the art of duo, and he was looking for dancers. And I watched the group, and I didn't get the impression that anyone had replied to him. And so I said, look, this is what we've got. If you like, we can do it. If you don't like it, yeah. So that's kind of that initial starting point. And he had this beautiful piece of music, and he had specific moments that he wanted things done. Yeah. And we at one stage said, ooh, 1.5 minutes is not long enough for us to be able to move the music. Can you add 30 seconds more, please? So Glen was brilliant, and a brilliant piece of music. And I really wish he was here to talk about what it meant for him, because he has all this, Daniel would be familiar with the terms, but he was using all these jazz terms. And I was like, what's that? And I can't remember them, but he had specific jazz terms that he was using. And
yeah. It was very textural too. I really appreciated these kind of crackly, sort of creaky textures in the music, and then with the guitar, it was a really interesting combination.
Yeah, the music was amazing. I loved it all. And in 1 second, I want to dive into talking with you, Daniel, a little bit about that. But something I wanted to say back to what you were saying, Kerensa, about the inexperienced with the puppeteering. I think that was really fascinating. To me, I have a lot of respect for puppeteering. It's actually, I think, a very developed skill form, and something that is not easy, to give life to an object. It's hard enough to give life and tell a story with our own body, and let alone to give a different object that life is very much a skill. But I thought it was kind of cool, actually, in the context of this piece, the way you guys were working it. Again, like what you were saying, Daniel, or I can't remember who was saying that actually, about seeing the people working it was really cool. I think that's really applicable to real life, the way we're being affected by people all around us, whether it be friends and family, society, government. And interesting to see that in the context of a puppet, but also in the context of the piece, to see it felt a little bit, you guys were just kind of moving with it, and it was experimental. And I think that was actually very fitting for this feeling of this piece, to this music that had that kind of that strange flow. And it felt like was like a body almost trying to come to life in a way, you know, like it felt like it didn't know what it was doing yet, and it gave it this really cool feeling for me. But I'd like to move on, and I wanted to ask Daniel, what was your experience in creating the music for this, and in relation to working with Glen? And I think the music was amazing, and the way you guys worked together, I don't know what that process was, but it seemed incredible. And like, what can you just tell us about that?
Well, actually, it was interesting. I mean, I didn't actually work with Glen. The music that he did for the puppet piece was completely separate from what I did.
Yeah.
And I think I was probably one of the last members of this group to participate. So in some of I feel like in a way I was kind of thrown in, which I love that because I love improvisation. You know, I would have just shown up the day of and be like, Daniel, just do something here. Which is basically what I did, especially with this piece, because Tulus and I didn't practice. I think there maybe when we had a discussion or a rehearsal beforehand, they said, okay, well, Daniel, maybe you could do something for Tulus, and it was kind of like, okay. And I saw his background. The background was just so evocative, and I couldn't help but think of like Egypt or something, really something very ancient and sort of symbolic, you know. And so of course I've had the onde marteneau, which is this old French electronic instrument that sounds like a theremin. And I was like, oh, I got to do some onde marteneau on top of this, you know, just kind of, which I think the onde marteneau could come across as a little kitschy in some ways, but I think it was appropriate because I think this whole entire show, in a way, has this element of playfulness and almost frivolousness, and so I allowed myself to just do this sort of melodic line, and then so I was doing the melodic stuff with my right hand and on the chords with my left hand on a keyboard, a different keyboard. So I had two different keyboards, and I really enjoyed this combination of sounds with Tulus's, with his costume and with the background and this whole mood. And but again, it was just really just thrown together. Like I was able to see what it was going to look like and kind of hear what I would put to it during the rehearsal. And I was like, okay, during the performance, I'm just going to really create this mood. And of course, I was watching Tulus intently throughout the entire thing, so that we could create something together.
Nice. Awesome.
Actually really glad that Daniel came on, because I remember that Kerensa was talking about how the music felt very short, and because then Tulus's dance portion would also be very short, so I thought that we have a musician on board, so why not ask him to add a little bit. And I think it also became quite nice that the puppet had a dedicated song that was by Glen, and that the song kind of changed quite a lot when it came to Tulus's turn. Like, changed a lot in the sense that the transition was very smooth, but there's a definite difference. And so it kind of made the demarcation between the two stages a lot clearer. And yeah, I kind of like, I think so far I've generally performed with Daniel, you know, and I think that like my style is very different from Tulus, so it's very fascinating to see how his music transforms with his style of dancing, because he's much more meditative and much more calm and much more yeah, like Tai Chi almost. And I really love when the beats came in, actually, Daniel, when it started getting a bit more tribal. I thought that was a nice touch.
Yeah, I felt like it needed it. I think there was a lot of, you know, sort of stillness and kind of ominous sounds. I was like, we could pick it up a little bit, add something, you know, structured and sort of, yeah, had a different form to it.
Nice, great. All right, I'd like to get moving on soon, but I had one more quick question for Kerensa. And then maybe if anyone else has any last things they'd like to say about it. But where does the puppet come from? Is that something traditional in Indonesia, or is it your own creation? Or do you want to talk about that at all?
My ex-husband was working at a building site and made it out of building materials.
Nice. That is so
Um,
cool. I love that.
We've got 2 of them, but because it needs 3 people, or 4, because you need someone to look at it, they had never really been used before, because you can't, yeah, there's so many legs and arms.
Yeah.
I have a question for Tulus about the music and the dancing with Daniel. Like, and I'll ask it in English first. Tulus, were you listening to Daniel's music and reacting to it? Or was it Daniel that was reacting to you? Or was Tulus doing what he does? And yeah, apakah Tulus sendiri mendengarin musik yang ditawarin sama Daniel dan lalu reaksi, atau kamu jalan aja dengan apa yang kamu gagas dan Daniel yang interaksi sama kamu?
Oh.
I could see Daniel reacting, but I wasn't sure how much the music was actually changing what he was doing as well.
Right.
Let's give him a set. I'm not sure if he heard it.
Yeah, did he hear it? Not sure if he heard the question.
I'm not sure if he heard, because I think the connection might have lost the connection.
Okay, maybe later. Tulus,
Yeah.
bisa jawab?
We'll talk about it later. Move on for now.
Ya, ada Pak. Ya.
Tadi mendengar.
Pertanyaan?
Oh, mungkin nanti aja ya.
Pertanyaannya
Nanti. Okay, I'll send in the question in English. Send in the question on the chat.
Okay, great.
Well, I could respond real quick though too, in that I feel like in a way I was more responding to him, partly because he had more preparation. He spent more time on it, and for me to come in and expect him to follow me would be kind of rude. But I did choose, like I said, the instrumentation and the sort of mood, like the ambiance that I wanted to create. And then from that, so that part of it was kind of autopilot for me. Like, okay, I have my instrument. I know the sort of the sounds I was going to create, sort of the melodic structure. But then following his movement, so I'm basically following his form. So I'm just doing my sound to his form, basically.
Great.
Something like that.
Nice. All right, I'd like to move on because we're running a little late. So that was lovely. Thank you all. And yeah, really nice to see that piece again, actually. I didn't get to see it very much during the concert, and so it was nice to look over it again. All right, so next up we have Duality, a collaborative piece, completely improvisational between Daniel, Valencia, and I. Which is a lovely experience. And let's go ahead and watch the video and then chat some more about it.
That was a short one.
Yeah, because we've done this a little bit in the previous session, but then because we didn't quite explore it, we thought we'd touch up a little bit on that this week, but short.
Okay. Yeah, totally. That was a really fun piece to do. I think what we had kind of wanted to dive into last time, we talked about this piece, like Valencia said, some in the first Artist Living Room of July, the USA edition, I think. and what the challenges. There was a lot of technical challenges and things like that that popped up in this one that were kind of fascinating and actually fun to deal with and try to like figure out ways of problem solving. Is there anything either of you would like to talk about in terms of the challenges?
I think I can start with the last minute rehearsal we had the day before the concert, where we figured out that because this was essentially an adaptation of contact improvisation but done virtually, how it started was because I asked Gemiah, like, do you think we can possibly do contact improv through the screen? You know, and then we tried it out a few times and we invited Daniel along where he played the music. And I think if I remember right, we tried it with some random music before Daniel came in. And then we felt a lot better once Daniel was there.
Because my music was better, of course, right?
Exactly.
Yes. But essentially, Gemiah and I needed to be able to see each other because we needed to react to each other. So then there is the question of the screen size. And then we realized that on the actual concert, because I was using my laptop with 20-something performers, everybody's screens was like tiny. Yeah. So we had to come up with this idea, okay, we need to eject everyone so that they're not panelists, because on the webinar you can be a panelist or an attendee, and basically the audience view and the panelist view is very different. So on the panelist side of things, we had these tiny screens, and I was like, okay, if we have these tiny screens, Gemiah and I will not be able to see each other. This is not gonna work. So we had to come up with a plan to eject everyone into becoming an attendee, and then naming them so that we can then bring them back in for the finale. So there's all these Zoom technical things that, you know, like if you're on stage, you don't have to deal with this. And then also, like, where are we placed? I think Gemiah touched on it a bit the last time, where we wanted to be next to each other, but in the end it became like one on top of the other or something. And I think when we were rehearsing, like when Gemiah and I are next to each other, we were going to kind of like merge into each other, like disappear into the screens into each other. But I realized that it looked that way to me, but when the recording was played, we were disappearing to the same side, so we're not disappearing in the same direction. So there are all these yeah, I don't know, Gemiah, if you want to evolve from there, or Daniel, if you want to.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, there was a lot of little things that came up like that that were, you know, that weren't quite expected. Like what Valencia was saying is, you know, because of some of the sequencing of what we were doing earlier in the show, and the transition between, because this was like, you know, my act and then her act, and then the two of us came together, made it so that we couldn't get our screens to be right next to each other. You know, like, because in rehearsals, we had a lot of really great rehearsals where I was like, because at first, like I said last time, like, you know, Valencia told me this idea, and I was like, oh, that sounds cool, but no way, like that's such a hassle or whatever. You know, I was just like, it's going to be so hard to improv and have a real connection on screens. And I was surprised that when we rehearsed it, you actually could feel a lot of connection, and there was this really nice flow that could happen. But then when it came to actually performing it, it got more difficult because we had these technical difficulties, and all of a sudden I was on the screen below Valencia instead of next to her, because we had we had to eject everyone else out from the panelists so that we could just see each other. And there was, you know, Valencia, myself, and Daniel. And then for some of it, there was also one of Valencia's other cameras that kind of stayed in the screen for a little bit, because we didn't get that ejected out in time either. But then somehow, not only were we not on the same level and didn't have that direct interaction with each other back and forth, but it also switched around the sides somehow, and so that we didn't, even the directions that we thought we were going with each other didn't quite match up, which was, it was interesting. It's not what I expected or realized. but still a really fun piece to be working on together. And for me, there's something that I actually wanted to go and beyond just the difficulties of it was also the way you can connect over screens, like over a different mediums, this posed many challenges in connecting and doing a performance, especially improv like this. But it also was really fun, and there was I could feel this connection happening between us from completely different locations. And I think that's really applicable in these times of COVID, where humans, aren't getting as much human-to-human connection as we usually would and often need. And so finding other ways of having that connection, that was really cool for me in this, was like finding it in a completely different way, other than just like, a FaceTime or Zoom call or whatever. So it's like, okay, we're like kind of dancing together from different locations, and it can work, so that was a really cool experience for me.
Yeah, I think the main difficulty with this whole Zoom thing is how the things look different from our end versus the audience end. A problem that we don't really have with the stage. It's kind of straightforward, like with the stage. But yeah, it was very fulfilling for me as well. And I don't know if Daniel, you have anything you want to add to that as to your experience?
It was a real fun experience working with both of you on this piece. And it was interesting how it came together too. I remember Gemiah and I, for a few days, were going back and forth, like, "Hey, let's try doing something together." And I don't remember. It just seemed like it didn't quite decide on anything. And in the last minute, I guess you guys thought, well, maybe you two would do something together, and then I could join in. So I thought that was very interesting, because otherwise there would have been a piece with Gemiah and me as well. Maybe a piece with me and Gemiah, and then a piece with me and you, Valencia. But I like that it worked out this way, because it was just a really interesting collaboration, and I think it also forced you two to work out the logistics of the technology with what you wanted to happen. And then you had a musician here that you didn't have to worry about the music. You were like, well, Daniel will do the music. You just work on this this kind of genius process with the dance and the Zoom mechanism.
Daniel,
so it worked out great.
It came to mind, like you gotta buy one get one free kind of thing going on.
I was like, hey, 2 for the price of 1, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, but it worked out great, and I'm glad that you and I, Jeremiah, you and I got to work together. So that was cool. I'm glad we made it work. So.
Same, definitely. Yeah, I was really glad about that, because I was bummed about our communication just didn't quite match up, and the whole big getting ready to perform and stuff. And I was like, oh, I want to work with Daniel, and I was like, oh, I don't know, it's getting late, and I maybe I should just go with the music that I already have, and then it worked out perfect that we got to do a piece all together, and I think everyone involved was really wonderful to have that connection. The way you connected us with the music and everything was really nice. What were you going to say, Valencia?
Yeah, it's kind of just nice also that this item is the second last piece, even before all these considerations about having to kick everyone out became a thing, because we had our piece finished, and then Alex will sing a little bit so that we have time to actually bring everyone back in. So it kind of just really worked out quite perfectly. And I don't know if we touched on this the last time, but Gemiah and I were like, okay, because I think essentially how it worked was Jemiah's piece and my piece separately, the solo pieces kind of represent a certain degree of metamorphosis, so kind of removing layers and shedding certain old aspects of ourselves. And then this piece coming together, we were thinking of him of Gemiah representing the masculine and I'm representing the feminine. And then we're like, so what is Daniel?
Yeah, the androgynous.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Like the overseeing, the all-seeing being.
Yeah.
the connect,
Exactly.
the glue, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Collective consciousness or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Those
Yeah.
people,
Actually, yeah, what you were saying though, I think it was really nice, you know, because this piece was essentially about, I think, the connection of masculine and feminine, and like that, I think, coming together of, you know, we didn't necessarily have a particular exact context of that, but, you know, of like could be one spirit of the masculine and feminine within one person or two people. And that, I think, was really like Daniel actually really played that part of the connection, kind of this bridge, you know, and which was really necessary in the context of trying to improv and work together from different places. It was really nice to have that. It felt like that music was like this kind of ethereal bridge between us that could bring that energy together so that we can move together and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting how all of the how everything coalesced. Like even musically, like that piano part that I came up with, like I thought I was just going to improvise like I did with Tulus, right? Just sort of make it up on the spot and just have it just be totally in the moment. But I remember in that rehearsal the day before, I came up with that, you know, that whatever that was, you know, that piano part was just so pretty. I was like,
and
I got to keep that.
yeah,
You know?
like, yeah,
Yeah,
I
it
have
just it became a theme that really resonated with the piece as a whole. Yeah.
yeah, I think Gemiah and I both agreed that I think we have rehearsal pieces that probably was better than the actual performance. It's just that we were we were not in costume or anything, so it's like it's really rehearsal. But I remember watching the rehearsal, and when Daniel first came up with that piano piece, when it first played, I said, oh, this music feels so nice, like literally in the video, like
Well, it was just
like spontaneous orgasm.
well, everything just clicked in that rehearsal. It was just like, oh wow, this is going to be great. Yeah.
Yeah, and Elsie and Glenn were our audience for that rehearsal.
That's
we
right.
asked them
Yeah.
to help us watch how it looks, the screens for them, you know, so that we could test out how it actually looks. Yeah, so they got the VIP preview.
They saw magic being made before their very eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the really great things about improvisation is that it's a moment, it's like an experience of the moment, you know, and one of the challenges within performance too is like to actually make it happen every time is hard. And I think that was interesting. Yeah, and this one, like Valencia said, is like, yeah, I think the rehearsal kind of was one of the most the really magic ones. I think they were all super fun and great, but there was one of those rehearsals that felt like, oh, it's just flowing, and then once we got to performance, it's like there's the technical challenges and all this stuff, and I'm like kind of distracted with all that, and it was harder to connect into that same feeling. But go ahead.
I was just gonna say that sometimes as an improviser, for me, the first time doing a new thing always feels the best for me as well. Like I think Daniel and we did a performance the second time we performed in San Francisco where I dropped my shawl. I was dancing with a shawl and I dropped it, and it was completely accidental. But like I think that if I wanted to recreate that and make it intentional that I dropped the shawl, it would have been very different. You know, it's because I accidentally dropped it and I didn't expect it. And then I reacted to it at that moment. People could sense that it was not planned, and people sensed that I was surprised, and they were curious as I was curious, dealing with the dropped shawl, you know, how I interacted with it. But if I recreate that and manipulate it so that it's dropped, I would be thinking, you know, I would be like trying to achieve something. So I'm no longer in the moment. So that separation of being in the moment and trying to achieve something, for me, it's like when I'm not thinking, when I'm just like being, that's when the magic really happens. So I think why the rehearsal felt magical is because there's that element of a first time and discovery, this newfound discovery where during the performance we were trying to recreate some things we created in the rehearsal. So even though it was improvised, we had certain goals, you know, and so maybe we were thinking a bit more and connecting a bit less. That's my
I
take
think,
on it.
yeah, I think that that's a risk one takes when one decides to like with me, like I decided that I wanted to keep that piano part. Well, then it took that being in the moment aspect out of it. So I was taking the risk that it's going to be just as good tomorrow, you know, you know. But it didn't matter because the what I saw in it was an actual piece, as opposed to just an improv. You know, like I was like, no, this is now a work. At least from the musical perspective, I was thinking, okay, this is a piece. So let's just develop it. If it's not as good as it was today, that's okay. But I want to create a piece. And then what you guys did was create these cool transitions with the two screens and all of that, which was also a creating of the piece. It had a linear sort of progression. So I think even though the intention was for it to be improvised, I thought it started out as improv, and everything else within it was improvised. But we had created a pretty definite structure that could be felt as very as having continuity and coherence, and I still think it was wonderful. I think we should do it again. Let's do it again right now.
Yay! Yay!
Yeah, totally. I think that subject of the improvisation and the balance, I think, between improvisation and non-improvisation is really fascinating to me, and I think it's something there's so many different levels of that, because everything to a certain extent is improvised. You know, it's like in every moment there's going to be some sort of stimuli that we're not used to, whether we're performing or we're living our normal life or something. Like, you know, like nothing is going to be exactly the same unless it's like done by a robot, essentially. But as a human being and as a performer, you have to find like what is the right mix, I think, for you. Like, how much do you need to plan your day and how much do you want to just let it happen? But especially when you're on stage, then it brings that into a more finite sense of because if you don't have enough planning, then people can see it, or if you have too much planning and it doesn't feel real, people also feel that. And I think finding that balance between different acts, you know, for me as a circus performer, I'm usually trying to make a perfected act, you know, and that's one of the struggles for me in doing this piece itself, is that like usually when I'm on stage, like I want to like make everything perfect. and the beauty of improvisation is that you can't, and that you just show what you have, and it allows for space for new things to come out and different things, and engagement maybe from an audience, because they're seeing what's happening in the moment, whereas sometimes a perfected act isn't as interesting, even because you're not experiencing it in the same way as the first time, you know. But that balance is always, I think, a key, and you have to figure out what's right for each particular thing, you know, like what is the right balance of improvising, what is the, you know, how much do I really want to know and have it set, or allow it to flow and become its own thing, which I think
Dominique wanted to say something or ask something.
Sorry, my chat screen is blocking your face. I don't think I saw it.
She's like,
I was wondering, because Valencia said that it was based on kind of contact movement, right? Could you feel each other through the screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's much more visual rather than tactile. You know, with contact improv in real person, you rely on touch and the weight and the feeling of somebody touching you. Whereas with the screen, it's much more visual. It's what you can see. And so we kind of decided on something along the lines of mimicking certain movements, or, you know, whether it's the same or opposite, so that it looks reactionary, that we are reacting to each other in real time.
Yeah, I think what was really interesting for me in this is like what she said. Is visual. You know, of course, I can't physically feel Valencia. There's no way to do that. But it felt like I could, in a way, because it was like I could feel my own interpretation of her movement, essentially. So if she made a movement that went sideways, then I would have a reaction often that would go sideways or something like that. and thus in reacting to her movement, I felt like I could feel the person in a way, if that makes sense. Like it's like you know, like she would move and I could just ignore it and then I wouldn't feel it at all. But which maybe at some moments I did on accident. But then in other moments, like I would react to this movement and I could feel like, whoa, like it, like a wave just passed from her to me, or vice versa.
I think Kerensa has a couple of questions, or has a question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to ask it now, Kerensa?
Not connected to this piece, but connected to Daniel and Nikki as artists.
Yeah, I
Good.
think
So-
it opens. Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking, yeah, I feel pretty finished up with this.
Yeah.
If there's not anything else that anyone wants to say about it, let's go ahead and move on.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Kerensa.
Great.
Because I really want to ask this because I may not meet you again in this sort of space. So Nikki, my question to you is that I see you, and I've seen you a few times in these chat groups, in these Zooms, and I see you very soft and very blonde and just like I don't know you, yeah, at all. But when I see you in performance, like it doesn't look like you. I mean, it doesn't look like the you that I see when I'm talking across the screen. It's this, the you I see here is light. When I see you dancing, which is usually, you know, all peace and love, belly dancing, you know, sorry, but I see a much darker version of you. And I don't know whether that's a real, like whether that's a created persona or you actually are expressing a darkness, or I don't know. I'm just curious about the two very different yous. And then for Daniel, my question is, because you mentioned that a lot of part of your work is about playing music for dancers, or yeah?
Yeah.
Like, why do you enjoy playing music for dancers when you could like have your music exist all by yourself? You know what I mean? I'm just curious.
Would you like to go first, Nikki?
Okay. Hi, Kerensa. Thanks for the question. Yeah, I think that, you know, when you go on stage, you kind of also, as you put the mask in your piece, you kind of also have that mask, you know, and it's also kind of more, actually, it goes also deeper inside of you, kind of like it's a like, or like, you know, a different side can be shown. So I agree with you that definitely showing different aspects of yourself, and I guess going deep inside of you when you are then expressing a performance, and it can be different things. So actually the Shiva in Exile, the other one that you might be referencing as being dark, Shiva in Exile, the musician actually was in a metal band before this. And so this piece was especially like a little dark. And then and how I started with belly dance is because in Germany there's a huge Turkish population. So it's very common in Germany to be exposed to belly dance. And then the other part, I think, is also quite uplifting. No, the piece that we did. So I think there are different ways of showing your artistry depending on what the context is.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, it's just so, I find those transformations that you make, and like I say, I just know you here and I see you here and I'm watching you, and then I'm watching both the videos. I've seen both the dance pieces. And I find those transformations just fascinating. This person is dancing that, but they don't look like the same person at all. Like I don't, yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah. That's funny to me because I totally get what you mean, Kerensa, but on the other hand, like, I don't know, yeah, like I think, well, you have a beautiful personality in person and on stage, and I didn't get exactly the dark feeling, but I got a much more I don't know, I'm losing the right word for that, but like
the word that comes coy. I don't know.
Boy, yeah, yeah. I was thinking of even stoic, or like there's like a kind of power that you like
Yeah.
when in seeing your face in a talking context, it feels very like a sweet smile and then once you're dancing, it's like yeah, like it has this like boom, like there's a presence
Powerful.
there that changes and power.
That's
Gemiah, I just want to, what you're saying is very interesting because I think I've got a little gender thing happening here where, yes, you're right, it is power that I see, but we often define power in women as being, you know, a darkness or something, you know, like culturally there's that cultural but that we bring to, yeah. And you're right, I think it's power. It's not darkness, it's actually power that is seen when
Yeah.
she's
Yes,
performing.
I guess
I
I
agree.
could have asked in the beginning what your definition of darkness was, right?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, go ahead.
But
Yeah, well,
thank
that's
you,
an
everybody.
interesting look.
Yeah, of course.
A little window into much of human culture, and I
Yeah.
think like
Semantics.
definitely something that I hope is changing in the world is defining power in women as darkness. You know, but it's so much. I think it's very prevalent in so many cultures. Is this fear of women's power and
Yeah.
things like that
And
really.
I think fascinating the use of words in different contexts, right? Like what was just shown, how we're using different words to describe kind of the same thing, but they have very different connotations.
Totally.
And like we're speaking the same language, but we're almost like defining certain words differently. So it becomes a semantic discussion.
Well, there's immense power in words and the way we use them, you know, and that's something that's really a fascination to me, and especially because I feel like I'm that eloquent with words. You know, I like to talk a lot, but I feel like there's so many people I know that really like when they speak, there's an eloquence and like a direct delivery of what they're trying to say, and I have so much respect for that, and I think it really is important to be aware of as humans and in developing culture and developing our world and trying to make it a better place, because so much of the way we talk about things has beautiful or negative impacts and we won't even realize it often. You know, like it's very easy to just be in the patterns of the way we've been taught to talk and communicate about things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Daniel, you want to go into your...
Yeah, what was the question again? Something about dancers or dance?
Why do you like working with dancers, and why have you made that choice in your career?
I have no idea. What's this thing with dancers? I don't know what the big deal is about dancers. I mean, not just joking.
Well, I think
I'm being ironic.
Just tried to get him to play for them. It's amazing.
I've been working with dancers for a good 20 years, working in the dance community in San Francisco, and I mean, it's one of many things that I do, you know. So but it's interesting. I do feel like through the dance community and through making music for dance, I have found much more depth in my music. So I think it's really helped me grow as a musician, I would say, over these past 20 years. And I feel like I'm still growing, but I also feel like, according to your question, in regards to your question, I feel like I'm becoming a little bit more selfish now. Like I want to do music more for me, and for people to see my music on its own as opposed to a score, you know, to some dance piece. Which, I mean, and I appreciate that too, but that, again, that's been part of it's been a very formative part of my musical career. So it's interesting you should ask that, because that's been my plight for the past 20 years, you know, like, you know, dance has been sort of where I've been most prolific. So of all my recordings that I have, I would say half of them, of the recordings that are available, our recordings have done for dance. So
do you think it has more to do with the availability of work in the sense of that, like, because these kinds of work were available and therefore you came into that, or do you
Of
feel a
course.
certain of more fulfillment in creating music in connection to something else, that it becomes like a feedback loop of inspiration?
Yeah,
Like,
I think, yeah, I think both. I feel like, I mean, because I've had my own projects I've been working on, but they always get sidetracked by, hey Daniel, can you do this dance piece for blah blah blah, or do this dance film, or do this dance thing, and my projects tend to get pushed aside. But it's okay, because I feel like, okay, this is what the universe is sort of, putting in my, offering me. So and I'm seeing and just trying to figure out this puzzle. Okay, now how does this fit in with what I'm doing? And I'm like, oh, actually, it doesn't really have to fit in. It could just be things that feed into one another and be separate in a way. So yeah, I mean, I would say over the years that was most of the work that I was offered, or most of the work that I was doing was work that that I did for dancers, or that dancers offered to me. And especially during this lockdown, like, I'm finding like it's really nice just doing things for me. Like, I just released 3 albums in this past 2 months, and it's like of just my own stuff. I'm just like, I'm digging this. This is just me. And dancers appreciate it. So it's and if they want to, in fact, some of them have used some of these things in their videos, or their things like that. So I mean, I feel like I'll always work with dance because, or dancers, because it's just, I think music and dance are just synergistic.
so because coming from the position of a dancer, I always get this sense of, like, I hear a music and it inspires me to move in a certain way, in a visual way. So I was wondering if the reverse applies to you, where you see something visual, or if you see a movement and it kind of inspires a music, either in your head or kinesthetically, that you feel like, I feel like adding this kind of sound which matches the visual, kind of like a reverse reaction from my viewpoint.
Right.
Does it
in a
happen
way,
that way?
in a way, it's a little more abstract, because as a dancer, if the dancer has to dance to the music, well, they just have the body, right? So, we could do staccato movement, or we could do slow movement, or we could do movement on the ground, or there are more limitations in a sense. As a musician, I just feel like it's a little bit more abstract. But like with Tulus's piece, like, I saw a background, I saw just all these immediate associations, and I was like, okay, I have an instrument that will work with that. But what if I only had a cowbell? Like, how would I, you know what I mean? Like, we kind of have to be a little bit more imaginative. Like, how am I going to play Tulus's piece with a cowbell? Or just my voice, like, so we have to be a little bit more like, oh, okay, what could we use? Because musicians are instrumentalists, or singers. So I guess it works both ways, but we're using somewhat different means to create the experience.
Yeah, because I think I'm so auditorily inspired. Like, I'm very much a hearing person. I also improvise music and voice, but based on what I hear, so it's always translating what I hear into something else. It's never been translating what I see into something else. I'm always creating what is visual, so it's just fascinating to consider these kinds of sensory inputs and how they become translated into something else, kind of like a synesthetic translation,
Yeah, actually, it's interesting because that, going back to that piano part that that piano part, like, when I played it that first time, it really sounded like, in a way, I was responding to you in particular, having worked with you for the past I think it was 2 months or something, off and on, and also hearing the music that you choose and the sort of sensibility that you have, right, as a listener. So I felt like this progression felt to me a little bit like something that you would choose, in a sense.
I feel
so-
so predictable now.
well, I didn't mean it that way, but it's like, again, like what a musician has to do is sort of like find the thing that matches the, not just the dancer, not just the dance, but the dancer. You know, so this is, you know, and with Gemiah too. Like I felt like everything I was doing was sort of trying to match the two of you. You know. Anyway, that's one thing that a musician can do, is sort of paint. You know, painting a picture with sound is interesting. And
Yeah.
painting a picture, when I think of a picture, that's an image, and dancing is image based. And anyway, I'm getting esoteric now, but.
It's interesting that, like what you were saying about doing the pieces for yourself now, because like in the medium of dance and performance, like I mean, for me personally, I still see the puppet piece as being Glen's piece. You know, Glen's idea and Glen's piece.
Oh.
But regardless of how I see it, what becomes dominant is actually what the dancers or the puppeteers are doing. So that was where the question is also coming from, because Glen's music was fundamental and I saw it as his piece, and yet the reality is it looks like a puppet piece.
Well, I think that's
Yeah.
an interesting thing these days. You know, is humans are just visual creatures. You know, and we're also very audio creatures. You know, we like our main two senses are sight and hearing. But I think, you know, we're sensory beings, and so whatever is our main sense, we tend to interpret things through that sense. And I think the first and foremost is the visual. Like that's what humans focus the most on, and then comes sound. And even, but that being said, neither is more important. I mean, it's like you watch a movie, for example, like if you take out the sound, it's horrible. You know, like it's I can't stand that when I can't hear things, and the sound is just as important as what we're seeing, and especially in terms of an act with music like that. Like that music is so key to what we're doing, but people will still have that visual interface first, usually, in what they see and what they think of. But ultimately, yeah, like a piece can be about the music too. It's just not everyone will necessarily realize that.
Yeah, I think music feels so ambient and so subconscious, you know. It speaks a language that you can't quite describe, and it's like a universal language, you know, and it hits you in a way that's very subconscious.
Yeah.
I just have one question, I think, for Farah, if Farah is still here. I think she is.
Yes.
I'm kind of curious because to dance samba to the kind of music that Nakamura was is very fascinating, because that's so unusual for samba. You know, that, like when you think samba, you don't think jazz music normally. You know,
Okay.
so I guess
Yeah.
I'm kind of experience was.
Yeah. What's your question? So, sorry. What was the question actually?
Yeah, it's basically like, how did it feel to dance samba to a song that is so not typical samba, you know? And I know you mentioned something about traditional samba also being kind of like dance to not so like fast-paced carnival type music. But yeah, kind of how do you blend that together?
Yeah. So the thing always about whatever inspires me to dance samba is always the music, right? And when I heard Chelsea's song Nakamura, it was so soulful. It really just called to me, and I really wanted to feel like, you know, I felt like I had to try and create and mash things up a little bit. Sorry, my husband is literally rocking the bed. Just climbing onto the bed with me.
First the grapes, then the
He's
bed.
just climbing into them. I'm sitting on a mattress though. Okay, all settled now? Okay, he's good. Okay. Yeah, and yeah, it was a bit challenging because it's not, of course, the traditional samba rhythm that you usually dance to. But a lot of people don't realize that there's so many. The samba music, there's so many ways you can do samba music. A lot of it is very jazzy, actually, you know, with bossa nova and all that. And that's what I've been experimenting on my own the past couple of years as well. Like I discovered that you can actually dance samba to almost any kind of music, right? And yeah, most people here see samba dancers dancing to the traditional carnival music with lots of percussion and lots of drums, but no, they don't see the slowed down version, the traditional samba sometimes, where it's just with the pandero, which is just the tambourine, you know, and just a person singing, and that's it. It's kind of like, what do you call that? Not a naked version, unplugged version of samba. So that's what I was trying to try and do with this piece, you know, and explore mashing samba dance with different kinds of rhythms. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's it can be jarring sometimes. It's challenging, but I loved it. Yeah, I found aspects of my movement that I didn't know that could be there. Yeah.
Nice.
Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. I just wanted to bring that out because I think it's fascinating to hear from the perspective of someone who practices samba, like for, you know, professionally, to kind of also to break the typical preconceived notions about samba that we have, you know.
Break the
we
mold.
think,
Yeah, a little bit.
you know, we think like crazy headdress and like sequins and like a lot of booty and
tiny tiny costumes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is
So
what traditional samba is not about. The what you see today in Rio is so highly evolved. It's just, you know, it's so stylized that people forget that the roots of samba really is Afro-Brazilian culture. Lots of it is rooted in African dance and African music, and it's very, very simple. Samba music, samba dance, and samba music is very simple. It's very soulful. It's very deeply rooted. Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hey, I'm gonna have to wrap up my portion of this and get going. But so lovely chatting with you all. Of course, anyone who would like to stay here, please do and keep having lovely conversation. But it's getting pretty late here, and I better get going.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah.
If anyone, I don't know if there's anything else that anyone wants to say on the note of the artist living room and what we were talking about.
Yeah. Any comments?
Yeah,
Any
comments.
It was just so good to see you all again.
Great to see you all. Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
And
it's
thank
kind of
you.
nice to watch the items, right?
Totally.
Like even edit the stuff, I'm like, oh wow, like it's a different experience watching it again, you know?
Yeah.
And thank you, Valencia, for bringing us all together. This
Thank
has
you
been
for being
an amazing
wouldn't work
experience.
otherwise. Yeah.
Ooh, who did we just lose?
Looking forward to more.
Nate?
Yeah, I look forward to
Yeah.
more. Really
Yeah.
love seeing your faces, and I hope to do so again soon. Feel free to hit me up anytime.
Conversations.
What was that?
No, I'm just saying conversations.
Yes, conversation is good.
Yeah. So yeah, we are just a very quick announcement about next month in case anybody forgot. For the artist living room, we're gonna do something either focusing on how live performance has transformed because of the pandemic, or it will be something about how we have reinvented ourselves and turned limitations into possibilities because of, well, the limitations that we have today, you know. And I'll be posting about the dates and the times on the Facebook group. I just want to make sure that everybody can see the Facebook group and the announcements I post there. Like, is it reaching you guys? Yeah. And we'll probably kind of invite like who wants to be in which ones, so that we can plan it and then we can kind of devise it. And if you have any friends that you know that you think might be a good addition as a fellow speaker in this context, who fits that category that I just described, who can have interesting experiences to share, essentially. That's welcome as well. Yeah, I think that's that. And yeah, September concert. Woo! Yeah, I don't even know where I will be in September.
Same, I'm feeling the same way. Life
Yeah.
is unexpected right now, unsure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Especially who are like, it's 1 a.m. where you are. Look at you sleeping.
Looking forward to some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. Any last words? More.
Thank you, everybody.
Great seeing everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Those who are going to bed, have a good night.
You too, Farah, Kerensa, Gemiah.
Have a good day. Have a good night.
Valencia.
Have a good evening.
Yeah, Daniel, let's do something soon. Let's do something together sometime soon.
That'd be awesome.
Me too.
You too.
Of course not. All right.
Yeah. Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Be creative. Have fun. You're all very talented, really. Amazing to see all of you do and hear more of your stories. I'm obsessed with the stories of artists. So I've been at all the ARLs for this season. I loved hearing what you had to say about your work or your performance experience, because I think that's such an important part of who we are as artists, is how the personal feeds into it and our histories and everything like that. And it was just nice to see it, because the lead up to Metamorphosis was so quick that no one really got to know each other. We just worked. So thank you for sharing, all of you.
Thank you, Kerensa.
You too, Kerensa.
Yeah.
Thank you. You too. I love the adding of the human element to everyone. You know, like getting to know you guys better.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye.
Walk for real this time. Good night, good morning. Goodbye.
Good night.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Love y'all.
Bye.